It was beautiful. You too, Ted. I heard a couple good things from you this morning. It was nice. It was nice. Good morning, everyone. Kalimera. So we continue with the Gospel of Matthew, and there are today some really very, very important things that I want to share with you. If you turn to your Bibles in your pews to page 41 and 42, we're going to speak about the feeding of the 5,000, and also Jesus is walking on the water. Now, if you want to see the feeding of the 5,000, all you have to do is look right over there, where Anne is. Just behind Anne is the feeding of the 5,000. You see Christ there with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And everyone always concentrates on the fish and the loaves. But that's not what it's all about. There's a lot more to this than 5 loaves and 2 fish. And that's what we want to address this morning. So let's read it. It's on page 41. When Jesus heard it, he departed from there by boat to a deserted place by himself. Anyone know why he did that? Why did he leave? Why did he go? He had just heard that John the Baptist, who was the forerunner, the only one depicted, by the way, with wings, John the Baptist, he was the forerunner. He was the one who came before, and he was just slaughtered. He was just killed. So he wanted to go away because he didn't want them to see, number one, his tremendous sorrow, but he also wanted them to pray there without him because he knew if he was there, they would be distracted. So we'll go on. But when the multitudes heard it, they followed him on foot from the cities. So even though he tried to leave, they said, no, we're going to come with you. And when Jesus went out, he saw a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion for them, and he healed their sick. When it was evening, his disciple came to him, saying, this is a deserted place, and the hour is late. Send the multitudes away, that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves. Listen to that carefully. He says, send the multitudes away so they can buy things for themselves. But Jesus said to them, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. And they said to him, we only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. How are we going to do that? Bring them to me, he said. Then he commanded the multitudes to sit down on the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looked up to heaven. He blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave them then to the multitudes. So right away I can see in your mind, you're clicking and you're saying, wait a minute, 5 loaves, 2 fish, 5,000 men. It doesn't include the women and the children. How in heaven's name is that going to happen? So they all ate, it says. So it doesn't say that some people went away hungry. It says they all ate and they were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments that remained. So not only did he feed them with 5 loaves and 2 fish, 5,000 plus that, but there was also 12 baskets remaining. So now we're trying to think in our head, well, what did they have? Each one have a crumb? How is that humanly possible? And we'll talk about that. Then he goes to the walking on the water. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he was sent away. If you've ever been to the Sea of Galilee, you'll know that the Sea of Galilee is sort of in a valley. And then on the outsides, it rises up. And this is where all these things happened. If you ever go, God willing, you'll go sometime. And you can see all of these things on the hill. And that's where the church of the Beatitudes is, and the church of the multiplication of the loaves. They're all there. So he went and sent the multitudes away, went up to the mountain to pray to himself. Now when evening came, he was alone. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. This spot, the Sea of Galilee, only has really one entrance for wind to come in. And that's why people wonder, why is the Sea of Galilee, we always hear about it being in turmoil, it's moving, it's waves. Why? It looks like it's covered, it's not. There's one section, and you'll see it when you go, one section that has sort of an opening, and the wind rushes through there, and when it does, it comes through and it disturbs the Sea of Galilee. So the boat now is in the middle, it tossed by the waves, and the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, and they said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer. It is I. Do not be afraid." That's where we stop. Tharsite, ego eimi. He said, don't worry. It is God. It is me. So let's talk about that. You know, most people, when they give something away, they want what business calls today ROI, return on investment. There was a man who used to live in this area. His name was Dave Thomas. Do you remember who he was? He was the founder of Wendy's. The founder of Wendy's. And everyone told him he was crazy. He said, because you want return on investments and you're going to sell hamburgers? He lived here. He lived in Fort Lauderdale, by the way. And Dave Thomas said, no, I'm not so concerned about return on investment because I know if I sit with people and I serve people that they will react. They will someday buy. So he came in and he said to them, you know, here's the ketchup. Take as much as you want. And everybody before said, whoa, 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 no, don't take as much ketchup. Only a little bit of ketchup. No, take what you want, he said. Come. He was the believer in return on investment. He might even be the founder of return on investment for all we know. But that return on investment is something that goes awry here in this story. Because Jesus says to them, okay, you're going to go feed the people. And he says, the people say to him, tell them to go away. It's dark now. He says, no, you feed them. That's the question. That's the real essence of the message of the multiplication of the loaves. You feed them. Now I know you'll say, well, wait a minute. How am I going to feed 5,000 people? I don't have enough to feed my family. But he said what? Come to me and be blessed. So they came to him and he blessed the loaves and he blessed the fish and then he fed everyone. He wasn't concerned about return on investment. But what we do is we come up with excuses. Excuse number one, I'm tired. Excuse number two, let somebody else do it. I've done it for too long. You know, I remember a wife of a parish council member who called me and ripped me apart on the phone, which happens once in a while. And she was saying, you know, Father, my husband spends too much time at the church. It's okay, what's he doing? He's feeding the poor, he visits the people, he serves lunches, he helps. And I said, and your problem is? Where would you prefer your husband to be? At the strip club? At the casino? At a bar? What's your preference? Well, when you put it that way, I'd rather he come to church. We all come up with excuses. I can't tell you how many excuses I've heard in 30 years of ministry. I bought an oxen, my lawnmower broke. One person told me that their dog had swallowed a piece of a 2x4 and they were taking them to be x-rayed at the hospital. Oh, you have to be kidding. And the issue here is that we can make all the excuses we want, but God knows what our excuses are before we even come out of our mouth with them. So the excuses don't cut it. Someone will say, I don't know the Bible. So? It's too far for me to drive. I had someone last week who we gave money to pay for a cab from West Fort Lauderdale to come here, and then came in. It's a matter of priorities. That's all it is. What is our priority? And if God is a priority in our life, then we find time. Just as the disciples said to him, what do you want us to do? How are we supposed to feed him? And he said, bring the loaves to me. There's the message. He didn't say, go ahead, cut your neck. He said, bring them to me. So he's saying to us, we need to be engaged in order to have things happen. Jesus' point is clear. You give what you have, and I will take care of the distribution. That's why prosfero, someone brings the prosfero, the bread, that we cut each week and it makes into the communion. Why? Because if you don't bring the prosfero, we can't have liturgy. So you bring the prosfero. If you ever wanted to make it, you go online. Yes, you can Google prosfero, and you can find the recipe, and you can make it at home, and it won't be perfect, and that's okay. But make it and bring it in with the names of the living and deceased in your family. So, prosfero. Now, the God that we worship is a lavish God, and he deals generously, giving much out of little. Our God is a generous God and a God of abundance. The measure we get back is far greater than the measure we give. It is sort of a divine law of investment, a return on investment, if you will. But we've got to stop thinking that we have nothing. Because when we have nothing, or we feel we have nothing, we do not engage with God, and that's not the truth. One of the reasons works best is because people of God do the work of God. We are the hands and the feet, the eyes, the heart. Jesus' disciples served as the means by which the work of God was carried out, just like we serve. The disciples didn't make the miracle happen. Listen carefully. The disciples didn't make the miracle happen, but without them, the miracle of the multiplication of the loaves on the wall would not have happened. So it's God and man working in synergy together. What God provided that day was more than enough. What God provides for us today is more than enough. Our faith, which can grow to abundant proportions, can be strong enough to get us through the hard times. Jesus knew this and he taught it. God is a God of abundance. The spiritual return on investment is bound to be plentiful, and it is bound to be good. So, my dear friends, we move briefly into the second part of it, the water. The water are the difficulties in life and always splash on us. Ever been on a boat before? How many have ever been on a boat before? Okay, splashing, right? Water comes up. And what did everybody do? They tried to hide from the water, kind of get inside the middle of the boat, because they don't want to get wet. And especially if it's salt water. You don't want it in your face, right? Tastes terrible. The boat is the church. The boat is the place where you come to be protected from the waters of the world. Now, does that mean that everybody in the church is perfect? No. Does that mean everyone in the church is striving to become more perfect? Yes. The only ones who are perfect are the ones who are depicted on the walls. Today is the feast day of Saint Charitini, a great martyr of the church, Saint Charitini. The ones who are perfect are on the walls, but we are trying to become more perfect. We said it last week. Today you're probably going to sit next to someone you don't know. Hold their hand. Say good morning. Kalimera. It's going to cost you anything? No. Will you make that person's day? Yes, you will. Say hello to someone you don't know. Don't say hello to the same people you know all the time. There might be new people here today. There might be guests here today who've never come to our church before. So reach out to them. It's not going to cost you anything. That's an important thing. Now, what happens? The boat is on the water. And as it goes out, all of a sudden, the waters start to rise. And the Sea of Galilee, I've been on it many times, can get very rough. And that boat starts to shift left and right. And the apostles, the disciples become frightened. And Christ appears to them on the water, walking on the water. And they say, "Oops, it's a phantasma, it's a ghost. And he says, no, εγώ είμαι, it is I. Don't be afraid. Tharsite, εγώ είμαι, he says. Those are the same words spoken in this church by Archbishop Christodoulos of Athens in all Greece when he visited us several years ago before he died. He was diagnosed with cancer in the internal organs. And he came to South Florida for some kind of therapy, and then he was coming here for an operation. And unfortunately, by the time the organs that were going to be donated to him became available, they opened him and the cancer had spread. But he came here and he used those words, Tharsite, εγώ είμαι. So no matter how rough the water gets, it never changes. God is not a phantasma. He is not a ghost. He is real, he is living, and he lives in each and every one of you. God bless you.
Like 18 after? Yes. Ετρούμεθα υπέρ των ευσεβών Θεοδόξων Χριστιανών, ετρούμεθα υπέρ των αδελφών ημών των ιερέων ορμονάχων, ιεροδιακών μοναχών μοσιζών και πάσης της